Okay, here we are, the last one, chapter 15. Made it through the entire course. And chapter 15, whatever comes up, managing communication, the most important part of a business. Okay, so explain the role that perception plays in communication and communication problems, the communication process and the various kinds of communication in organizations, how managers can manage effective one-on-one communication, how managers can manage effective organization-wide communication. So we'll start off with communication is the process of transmitting information from one person or place to another. Basic management process cannot be performed without effective communication. Management process involves planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. Remember when we saw that way back at the beginning? Okay, can't do any of those uh, with more than one person unless you have effective communication. Okay. So there we go. So everybody's played the telephone game where one person starts out whispering something in someone's ear and it goes around in the circle, and by the end, it's surprising to see what the last person heard. That's supposed to be the same as what the first person said. It doesn't normally come out very close. So here's the stimulus that we have, 3 different stimuli. We have their attention. How much attention are they paying you? Their perception. Uh, how are they filtering it out? Based on what? Maybe it's based on the experience that they've had recently. Maybe it's that they're hungry. Or maybe it's that in the past you've said things they haven't liked or have liked. Either way, positive or negative. And so their perceptions are going to be different. That's why two people that go to ECU or work at McDonald's or what have you have different perceptions about their environment, um, and the organization itself, and then their interpretation of what is said, and then the retention. How long do they actually remember it? Okay, all that goes into their ability to communicate. Um, Selective perception, tendency to notice and accept objects and information consistent with one's values, beliefs, expectations. Inconsistent information is ignored. Okay, that's why it's so hard to play the game where the name of the color and the color itself are different because they're inconsistent. So you want something that's consistent that you understand. Okay, if it's inconsistent, then you just ignore it. Closure, tendency to fill in the gaps of missing information, assumes that what one does not know is consistent with what one already knows. I had a disagreement with my landlord, and one of the things that she said was, if you're not sure about something, then you should just ask. And my reply was, I was sure because of what the lease states. And she said, well, things are rules go beyond what the lease states. And my response was, well, legally they don't. You're supposed to abide by the lease. And I was abiding by the lease. And we both agreed that I was abiding by the lease. But her perception was that they can add rules whenever they want. And my perception was that they can't add rules whenever they want unless they create a new lease with those new rules in them. And then I can choose to sign it or to move. Um, People have the basic need to understand and explain the causes of people's behavior. We want to know why people did things. Internal and external attribute, excuse me, attributions are used to explain people's behavior. Well, he did that because he had a poor upbringing. Um, there's even a song out there. Uh, it ain't my fault, and all the reasons why it isn't their fault, and their upbringing, their schooling, where they're from, and so on and so forth. But it's all goes back to the heart of why do people behave the way they behave. And we as people want to understand why people do the things that they do. What's their motivation? Okay, so defense bias and fundamental attribution error. The coworker, how can they expect us to make sales if they don't have hot selling inventory in stock? We can't sell what's not there. And when I was selling Cadillacs, that was the saying. We can't sell air. In other words, we can't sell cars that if we have no cars, and we can't sell to air. In other words, if we have the cars but there's nobody on the lot, then it's impossible to sell a car because we have no customers. So you need both customers and cars. The employee of the coworker. That's the third sale I've lost this week because company management doesn't keep enough inventory in stock. I can't sell it if we don't have it. So they're basically agreeing. Okay? Then the boss is saying, that new employee isn't very good. I may have to get rid of him if his sales don't improve. Okay? So he's looking at the employee's fault that not selling what they have, and the employee's saying, can't sell what you don't have. Communication problems. Self serving bias, tendency to overestimate one's value by attributing success to oneself, failures to others, or the environment. So when someone says that they're a self made person, that's success to oneself. Success is to oneself. Nobody is a self made person. Everybody is a result of all the uh, interactions that they've had their entire life with teachers, with family, with friends, with everyone that they've met, whether it's a little or a lot of influence, they've all been influenced, they've been helped or hurt by their environment. You start out with a certain genetic code that gives your IQ and your ability to learn, and then from that point on, it's your environment that takes over. So no one is a self-made person. Everyone's a result of their environment. Uh, Interpersonal communication process. So you have the receiver and the sender. The sender, a message to be conveyed. They encode the message. They transmit the message. So in other words, here the message is actually electrical impulses in your brain. When you encode the message is when you translate those electrical impulses into some form of language. It could be verbal, written, you could do charades, whatever it is. It's converting electrical into some form of message encoding. Then you transmit it. Okay, so when you're transmitting it, that means you're actually talking, or like I said, charades, you're actually acting it out. And then they receive the message. Obviously, if you're talking charades, you know that it's very difficult to understand the message with them just acting it out. But even talking, you might think that you understand what the person's saying, but that doesn't mean that you actually understand what they meant to say. And then they decode it once they receive it. Like if it's talking, they receive it through their ears. They also receive it through their eyes if you're close enough because you can see the facial expressions, body posture, and all that go into expressing something. If you're face to face with someone, communication is only 5% verbal and 95% visual of what the person looks like, how they're acting, and so on and so forth. You decode the message. Again, you translate it into electrical impulses, and then your brain interprets it. Okay? And all that is done in seconds. Okay, noise and jargon, anything that interferes with the transmission intended message, jargon, vocabulary particular for a profession or group that interferes with communication in the workplace. Okay, so someone might say something, um, I forget what the letters stood for. When I was in financial aid, when I worked in financial aid, they had this code that they used before I got there, but they told me that to make sure that you're very careful when you're talking to students or parents uh, at the front counter and you're writing jargon because they don't know what the jargon is. But there was something that they used to file or label a file uh, FAT, and those letters stood for something that had to do with financial aid transcripts or something like that it needs. And the lady saw the financial aid counselor write that and was just infuriated because she was a large lady and she thought the financial aid counselor was saying that she's fat when it didn't have anything to do with the word fat. It had everything to do with the jargon of what FAT meant. But that, you have to be careful with that because people don't understand what you're actually trying to convey if you're using jargon that they don't understand. Um, Formal communication, downward communication, of course, from the CEO or the president down to the lower employees. Upward communication goes from the lower employees up, and horizontal goes to coworkers, side to side. Okay, you have the gossip chain and the cluster chain. One person tells three people, and then those three people tell three more people, and then so on and so on and so on. Where the gossip chain is one person's telling everybody. Okay, go down here to this one. So you have immediacy behaviors. Put your phone away. Turn off the TV. Clarifying response. Could you explain that again? Paraphrasing phrase. What are you really saying? Summarizing response. Let me summarize to understand what you actually are trying to tell me. Um, you make eye contact. I'm confused. Would you run that through again? Paraphrasing. So your perspective is that, or summarizing response. Thus far, you've discussed so and so. Okay. Destructive feedback disapproves without any intention of being helpful, negative or defensive reactions. Constructive feedback intends to be helpful, corrective, and or encouraging. Must be immediate, focused on specific behaviors, and problem oriented, not person oriented. You're not talking about the people, you're talking about the problems that created the situation and not personal problems that they may have. Organizational silence, withholding information, occurs when employees believe that telling management about the problem would not make a difference or might get them fired. So you're going to want to keep your job so you don't say anything. And improving reception, ways to overcome organizational silence. You have company hotlines, you have survey feedbacks, frequent informal meetings and surprise visits, blogs, town hall meetings, things that you can remain anonymous and give honest feedback. But most of all, people have to feel that they won't be punished for giving open, honest feedback. Now, the feedback might not be accurate, and then there needs to be clarification. But if it's honest, that people actually believe that, then it needs to be handled respectfully if you want to continue to get them. And that is the end of our PowerPoint presentations for the entire course. 15 chapters completed. And I hope they were helpful for you.